Welcome to the Think and Grow Rich series on the Courage to Be podcast with Tanya Vasallo. Before we get into this episode, I want to share with you that I'm on a mission to close the gender gap in the podcasting world so that more and more women's voices are heard. If you feel that this is something you value too, then please rate, review, and share the podcast. In exchange, and as my way to say thank you, I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. All you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course. Welcome back to the Courage to Be, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And we are back with the amazing Reg Malhotra. If you have not listened to his episode it's part of the series of Think and Grow Rich, but you have to go back and how he goes deeper and how our brain works and the mind and imagination, using intention. I mean, it's just been so mind-blowing to me, no pun intended. But Reg, welcome back. I'm so looking forward to your teachings today with us and giving us some tools.
Sure. I'm glad to be here again.
So tell us, what are you going to teach us today? What are we going to dive deeper into?
Sure. Tanya, in our podcast, in the episode that you invited me for, we spoke a lot about visualizations, imagination, being intentional, and so forth. In this segment here, I'm happy to leave your listeners with a more specific, defined, step-by-step process on what I'd like to reference as making outcomes more achievable. Okay? So let's call it a process to achievable outcomes.
That sounds fabulous to me.
So we spoke a little bit about in the podcast about, the brain does not know the difference in real and imagine, and things ideally should happen in your head for the chances to be maximized for you to have it in physical form. And we also spoke briefly about, and in these brief sessions, without going into too much detail, I'll just say this: the order and sequence in which we do things in our mind are relevant. Okay, so there is an order and sequence. Just like we say in language, one of the things we teach is linguistics. The order and sequence in which you say things to yourself can have a material impact on your behaviors. So, order and sequence. So, for this process to work, the order in which I tell you this is important. Okay, so to have an outcome, a desired outcome, going back to the point of desire, becoming more achievable, here's what we do. Step one, begin by asking yourself, how is it possible that I don't have it now? And by the way, I just want you to consider. So anybody listening to this, if there is something you want, you ask yourself this question, because questions lead to answers in the brain in the form of pictures, sounds, feelings, and self-talk. And I want you to consider what response comes up. Sure, you can write it down, but you could just contemplate. How is it possible that I don't have it now? Have you got that, Tanya? That's step one.
Yes, I'm with you.
Number two, now once you've considered that, I want you to move to step two, which is, what specifically do I want? So now is the time to get specific. Your unconscious mind, your subconscious mind, and even your brain, if you like, responds best to specificity. So get specific. If you said, I want to be happy, is that specific? No. Happy is a state. It's not a goal. Yeah. So we got to get specific. I want to be in a relationship with this, ideally with this kind of person by this date, because that's important to me, for example. Or I want to make $20,000 a month doing what? Get specific. Or I want this kind of house by the water in this date, by this date. Okay, so these are examples of being specific. So you got that? That's step two. Step three, where are you now in relation to that goal? Must consider that. So if you're putting that in the notes, this is basically what I'm telling you is a series of questions, and that's the order to follow. If it was me, I'd say, where am I now in relation to what I want? So example, if I want a big home in front of the water in this place, I keep bringing this example up because one of my students just said that to me 2 days ago. And she was so specific about, I want it in Seattle, in front of the water. Okay, that's good. And so my mind will say, well, in relation to that, either I'm nowhere near it or I'm on my way to it, or, so that leads to association, automatic association. Means you get into your feelings. Where are you now in relation to that? Next step, what will you see, hear, and feel when you have it? So you got to address all three. What will you see? If there are any sounds that are relevant, and by the way, sounds are very relevant. What will you hear? And what will you feel? Ask yourself that. Okay. Next step, the step after that. This is one of the most important steps. I call this an evidence procedure. The question is, how will I know when I have it? I want you to just contemplate it. How will I know I have it? Say I want to go for a holiday to Hawaii. If you asked me, Reg, how will you know you have it? My answer will be different to my wife's. I'll give you an example. I've actually checked that with her. I will be like, I have this black cab that arrives near my home, to my home whenever I have to go to the airport. And immediately the picture is of me getting into that cab. The driver is there, and I'm just getting into that black cab. And to me, I know I have it. Everybody knows it differently out there. If you ask my wife, she said, I need to arrive at Honolulu airport. Right? Same thing. If it's a money goal, some people say, I'll know I have it when I've seen the email. Some say it's when I'm looking at my phone, at my bank account. Some say when my accountant rings me up. I don't know. It's different for different people. So I want you to consider, if you want a home, how will I know I have it? Is it the papers you're signing? Is it you and your partners screaming in the air? This is called evidence procedure. See, a lot of people say, I want this. But if I ask them, how will you know you have it? I don't know. But you must consider it. Your brain will love you for it. Are you ready for the next step?
I am. Keep
Okay,
it
next
coming.
question. What will this outcome get for you or allow you to do? So you got to go there. You're going to consider the consequence of you getting it. Now, this is really starting to prime your brain. What will allow you to do? Just think about it. Write it down if you'd like to, or consider it. As long as you consider it, that's a really good move. Next one, is it only for you? For this process to work the best, it's better if it's only for you. I'm not saying to be selfish, but if it's for world peace, it becomes highly dissociated. It will not produce sometimes the kind of motivation you need. It's very good to want to do things for others. I accept that. It's what my whole life is based on. But when you're starting on this journey, when you don't have a lot of things you want, when you haven't created a pattern of achievement, a pattern of realization, ideally this should be for you. So the question to ask, is it only for me or is it for my mom? Ideally, for this process to work, this should be very relevant to you, your desires. Okay. Next one, now we want to get even more specific. Where, when, how, and with whom do you want it? Consider that. This is going into the details now. Where do you want it, if it's relevant? When? How specifically do you want it coming about? And who with? Consider with who. Like if I asked you, you said to me earlier that one of your goals is to, spend some time in Bali. Who do you want it with?
My family.
Correct. So can you see how you run that image? So I want your brain to get that image. Next one. What do you have now and what do you need to get your outcomes? You must consider, what do you have now? How do you do that? There are 3 sub questions. Have you ever had or done this before? It could be something like that. Have you ever had or done this before? That's the first sub question to that. Second one, do you know anyone who has? The more your brain sees others doing the things you want, the clearer references it starts to get. And number 3, this is the big one, but this time I'm bringing it in the right order. Can you act as if you have it now? Now, after you've considered all of the questions that I just gave you, if you get to this part and you cannot act as if you have it, you need to go back to the drawing board. You need to ask yourself, is this truly important to me? Is this what I really want? Or am I just doing it because it's a nice to? I'm not saying nice twos are not achievable, but if you can act as if, you have massively increased the possibility of achievement. And the last one is what we refer to as ecology. Ecology is the study of consequences. Ecology means win-win outcomes. A lot of people can unconsciously or subconsciously stop in their tracks or not get to the end of what they want if it is harmful or adverse for others. I mean this tremendously. So we must consider the question, for what purpose do I want this? And what will I gain or lose if I have it? You know, I had a client once, Tanya said to me, I found the formula, Reg. I know exactly now. I have the tools, I have the knowledge, I have the step-by-step method that I can have $1 million in 12 months. I said, okay, great. And he was a private client. And he said, can you do your magic? And, just give me that fuel. So I'm just going to do it. So first thing I did was, tell me about your life. Listen to this. At that point, he had 3 children under the age of 6. His marriage was not doing very well. He wasn't contributing. He wasn't being present. He wasn't available. For him to get to that $1 million, although it sounds like a great thing, $1 million, sure. But part of his step-by-step, he was going to be away from home, sometimes days, if not weeks at a time, for that entire upcoming 12-month period. Now let's consider ecology here. Marriage is on the rocks, 3 little children. Sure, he may have found a way to make $1 million, which is, by the way, not guaranteed. And now he's going to be away even more. You tell me, is that ecological?
It doesn't sound like it if I were in that position. Hi there, I have something really cool for you. I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. You can check out all the details in the show notes. All you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcast, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course. You can also find other free goodies in the show notes. Go check them out.
Exactly. So the listeners must consider this. Sometimes the goals we are considering, we must consider ecology. And how do you do that? For what is the purpose I want it first, and then what will I gain or lose if I have it? Look at the answer of that. That will make the goal more achievable for you if the consequences are not severely adverse. Now, there is always a thing that you have to give up something, like Napoleon would say. I absolutely agree with that. You must know what price you want to pay. But then consider, is that the right price to pay right now? Because there are other people affected. So when you think about ecology, study of consequences, there are layers to it. The first layer is the people who are closest to you. What is the consequence on them? Then they can next layer, people in your community, then in your country, and then the planet. People, things in different levels of ecology. There are people who aspire for things, but they consider the impact on the planet. You don't have to do that right now. But as you grow in your journey of achievement, it's inevitable.
I have a question with this that just showed up, though. I completely get it. But how do you know to distinguish if it's the paradigm or that it is having a harm on someone else? For example, say you wanted to do a course that's out of your means, or hire a business coach or something, that's, I don't know, $20,000, but your family's income is $50,000 a year, so it's a substantial investment. Is it, like, when you ask that question, is it harming the ecology of our family, because it's like, oh, well, we're, like, this is very risky. We're, spending all this money on this, and we don't really have a guarantee that you're going to, improve your business or grow your business or whatever it is. How can you distinguish, is it my paradigm or my amygdala that's sounding all the alarms like, oh my God, you're going into something big. We don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Or do we override it and say, on the long term, it's not going to be harmful for the family? Like, how do you dance in that balance, Reg?
Great question. Let me go back to the order and sequence here. Notice at what stage we asked that question. This is after we went through, what is it I want? What will it do for me? What will I see, hear, and feel when I have it? How will I know I have it? Is it only for me? Where, when, how, with who? If you did all this in this order, by the time you get to the question of ecology, your consideration of the ecology will be more balanced. Okay? So by this stage, you already know the benefit of having it. Your brain has seen it, it's heard it, it's felt it. You know that it's got all these benefits. So I would have to say, by the time you get to this question, you should be able to look at, if you're investing in something that is going to help your business, you've considered the benefits. And if you go in this order and sequence, it's not just a case of, hey, if I spend $50,000, my family is going to be harmed. You're like, well, what will it do for us? And that goes back to, you got to take chances. You got to take risks. That's why I said at the start, the order and sequence is very critical. You can ask these questions anytime, anywhere, in any order, but I'm just giving you a proven process that is more likely to give you a question coming out of both logic and feelings and a balanced approach at the same time. The purpose of this, studies after studies in our field has shown it makes outcomes more achievable.
No, this is beautiful. And that's a great response too. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. It's just my brain was going into, well, what if in a positive way? What are the good things that could come out of it? And because I hadn't gone through the whole sequence, it makes complete sense.
There are 4 mini questions, extremely powerful, to add to this right at the end. However, I think if people can get to this stage, that's a great start. And maybe sometime in the future, I'll release it in another format. Therefore, I just want people to get to this point, because the next 4 are like adding steroids to this whole thing.
Got you. And where can people find you, Reg, if they want to be part of your community or continue and find the 4 mini questions, once they've achieved this, like where can people locate you?
So neuromastersacademy.com is our website to look up more stuff. Other than that, we have a podcast now, Neuromasters Podcast. It's not sort of an interview format. It's literally me talking in episodes and giving little nuggets and little pieces of information that can be absorbable and easy to apply. A lot of what we do, Tanya, is what we refer to as actionable intelligence. And just giving people, chores without any actionable bits is not my style of teaching and sharing. So there's a lot of information that one can gain from there. And other than that, I run free seminars once every couple of months. Of course, there is our trainings. We have our flagship training is called Neurohacking Live. It includes neurolinguistics and really powerful tools to reset your life, get actionable tools around performance goals and creating better lives particularly around relationships, money, and your self-talk. Those are paid programs, but I do run like 2-3 hour free seminars. I call them crash courses now. The best way to hear about them is go to the website and try to download or register for a video or a guide, and your email will register with us and you'll automatically be informed of those classes. They run about once every 6 weeks to 8 weeks live on Zoom, and that's a great place to also hear from me for 2-3 hours at a time.
Once again, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, for sharing your time, Reg, and for all the work that you're putting out into the world. You're amazing. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you, Tanya. It's been great.
Hi there. I have something really cool for you. I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. You can check out all the details in the show notes, and all you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course.